Hello and welcome to a Monster Mechanics mini episode where we're going to do another round of broken telephone monsters.
Alrighty. All right. Hold on.
All
I
right.
have a dog who needs into my lap.
I locked all of ours out.
Well, when I do that, they come beating the door down. So
Yeah. Luckily, they're out there happy with Ariel right now. If there was nobody else in the house, then they'd come. First, let's do a quick explainer.
sure.
Long-term listeners will be familiar with the format, but anybody who's new may not know. Broken Telephone Monsters is the idea of the old broken telephone game where you heard it from a guy who heard it from a guy who heard it from a guy, and the message gets kind of twisted over time. And this is the actual origin of several mythological creatures. Like most famously, the questing beast is described as a mixture of several animals, which when you trace it back is pretty much just a giraffe. And like unicorns are actually a pretty good description of if you saw an antelope from a certain angle, you could describe it as a unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are doing the same thing. We've each, in prep for this episode, picked an animal, and we are going to try to sort of describe it to one another in an oblique manner in the way that it might be interpreted as a monster.
Mm-hmm.
So why don't you start off, Zach?
All right. Like last time, I'm going to kind of frame this in sort of a story or myth format about a young man who had wandered into the forest and in the process of his adventures was climbing a tree.
Mm-hmm.
And at some point during his climb, the tree began to writhe and shake underneath his grasp and twisted and struck him.
Okay.
And he fell to the ground, stunned and dazed, but for the most part unharmed, but covered in some scratches and whatnot, and wandered off to his village. The villagers saw his approach and shied away from him, because when he approached the village, he was beginning to seep blood from every orifice, from his eyes, even from his hair follicles, creating sort of like a drenched red look to his head. At which point he finally expired there on the ground.
Oh man, that is patently horrifying if this is based on a real creature. Okay, so mine is more of a it's a myth in terms of like nautical sailors have come to the conclusion recently that if you catch a fish and you cut off its tail and toss the head back, just the front half of the fish, that they will continue to grow. In fact, it seems like this is the way to get this is how largish fish are sometimes created, is that they can survive completely without their back half and in fact grow much, much larger, up to like 12 or 13 feet from bottom to top, because they're much shorter still, but they become these huge, like just the floating front half of a fish. And it doesn't seem to damage them at all.
Interesting.
Part of the game here is that we're supposed to guess what the original creature was.
Mm-hmm.
I am drawing a blank on yours. So it was something, he was struck by a tree or something, presumably in a tree, and that it caused him to bleed from every orifice and then die. I'm vaguely familiar with venomous and poisonous creatures of like from around the world, but I'm not sure about that one. I'm drawing a blank. I don't think I can come up with an answer.
Okay, well you're on the right track with venom.
Mm-hmm.
The animal I had in mind is a tree-dwelling snake called the boomslang.
The that's a great name. Oh my God, yeah.
The snake's venom will often seem innocuous at first, or perhaps give the victim the impression that they've gotten a dry bite, which is an unenvenomed bite. But what it does is it thins your blood to the point that it can begin seeping out of every orifice in your body, including hair follicles and pores.
Oh yeah, that's yeah, that one you don't even need to make a myth. It's just awful.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, great.
So yours was, you had a fish that can survive being cut in half.
Yeah, and in fact, it makes them grow larger.
Oh, like I can think of several things like that have a sort of amputation, but I'm drawing blanks on fish. I know of like starfish, and I think maybe not octopus, but they regrow limbs.
Yeah, some species of octopi will they'll rip off one of their arms, and they can either use this as a way to distract other like predators, but actually several of, or one, at least one of the arms of male octopi can be their sex organ. This is how they deliver sperm. And so they can actually rip off their own arm and give it to a mate and be like, here, you deal with this. I'm going to go. So, but no, that is not what I was doing this time. I am referencing the mola or sunfish. It's a genus of very large fish that looks pretty much like the front half of a fish.
Crazy.
And they get huge. They're like 3 or 4 meters from the tip of their bottom of their dorsal fin to the tip of their ventral fin. So like they're these massive things, but they're relatively short. They look like a swimming head.
It's bizarre.
Yeah, so I'm proposing that somebody would have seen this and be like, oh, if you cut the tail off, they'll get bigger.
Well, that's cool.
All right. Well, so that's today's bonus episode. Join us next week. Our full episode is going to be Our full episode is going to be Doulahans.
All right. Till next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Monster Mechanics. Our call to action this week is that you should go to your podcatchers and look for a podcast called Dark Valley. The first 2 episodes are out now. It's sort of a Twilight Zone style anthology, a podcast. You can go check out the first 2 episodes now, but the 3rd episode comes out not this week, but the next. And you'll see on the cast list is good old me. And it's a really good episode. You're going to enjoy it. You should go check it out now. Again, that is Dark Valley. Find it on your podcatcher of choice. Now for the credits. Monster Mechanics is produced and edited by me, Scott Paladin, and hosted by myself and my best friend, Zach Jaquays. All of the ideas generated during this podcast are released under a do what the f you want public license.